It's all right. We talked a little bit yesterday about another OHSAA State Football Championship weekend in the books in the Hall of Fame city of Canton, and we thought it'd be a good time to bring on Tim Stried from the OHSAA to talk about that, the winter sports scene, and some other cool stuff that's going on down there in Franklin County. Tim, there he is in studio. Tim, how you doing this afternoon?
Good. I'm Sammy. Hey, good to hear from you. Thanks for having me on. Doing well here.
Good stuff. Good to have you, especially on the old video down there in Columbus. So we wrap up another weekend of state football championships, and my goodness, it was cold Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And, of course, you had the big Buckeye-Indiana game Saturday, and I kind of took away from a little bit of the numbers, I'm sure, on Saturday. But your thoughts on the weekend in Canton and how everything kind of came together for you all and some of the good, maybe some of the stuff that, you'll constantly be working on.
Yeah, well, it was another great weekend in Canton, but you're right, it was cold. That did keep the attendance down a little bit. We did not have any of those big games that went over 10,000 that we often see. So yeah, numbers were down a little bit. The cold was certainly a part of that. Maybe the Ohio State game Saturday night factored into that. Wheelersburg and Liberty Center both had large crowds, but it might have kept some of the neutral or casual fans away.
Sure.
Not as bad as what happened in Illinois, though. So Illinois.
I saw that.
Yeah.
What in the world? For
so
those that don't know, for those that aren't familiar with him, kind of go ahead and tell us about what happened with their state title games.
Yeah, Illinois plays their football state championships on Thanksgiving weekend, Friday, Saturday. They played their games on Friday. Friday night, the snowstorm to end all snowstorms rolls in. So Illinois State University, where they play, closed down and said, everybody, you got to go. So a lot of them just stayed there. They couldn't get out, so they just stayed there, and then they played the rest of their finals on, I think it was Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yeah.
So
that was nuts.
That happened to the OHSAA one year with our girls basketball state tournament, but it has not happened for football.
That was I was reading about that yesterday. I'm trying to do the quick math here. I scribbled the attendance. I think it was around maybe 34,000 maybe, Tim, for the weekend.
Yeah, that's right.
In Canton or so, give or take a few. Can you recall a year? I couldn't. I went back and looked 15, 20 years where either when we had 4 state championship games or 7, the combination of the amount of miles traveled by all the schools that were represented. I mean, yeah, we had Kirtland, which is semi-close, Glenville, semi-close, Avon. Everybody else was a long ways away. I can't remember where more miles were traveled in this past year.
That's a good point. That's an interesting question. I'd have to go back and look at that too. Anderson and St. X coming up from Cincinnati. Wheelersburg coming up from just as far, and then Liberty Center from the northwest corner of the state. So
St. Henry.
I agree. A lot of miles.
Yeah, that's there was a lot of traveling going on, and we didn't, unfortunately, and you can't. I mean, there's nothing you can do. We just didn't have a lot of close games over the weekend. X and Orange was probably the most competitive game, and that was a really good game. 2 great programs there, but it's a flip of the coin. Some years you're going to have some nail biters, and some years you're not. This year, it kind of didn't work out, but still. Of the folks that you talked to, in Canton or back in Columbus, was everybody pretty happy with the way everything kind of went off this past weekend, even though the games weren't nail biters?
Yeah, a big yes for sure. We love the football finals in Canton for sure. No matter the weather, they roll out the red carpet for everybody. I've said before, football in Canton is like basketball in Dayton. There's the infrastructure in place, the hotels, the hospitality. A lot of folks stay up in the Belden Village area, some downtown. So certainly it's a great place to be. Visit Canton. is a part of that as well. But just the increased staff at the Pro Football Hall of Fame and the staff that is focused specifically on the stadium. We just love working with those people. Already looking forward to next year.
Sam Stried is our guest from the OHSAA, joining us here on the Sam Bourquin Show. You see him right there on the screen, 1310 WDPN, and all of our social media platforms. So I think Tim, I think the contract is for another 2 years, and then it will go up again for bid. Is that the deal?
I think we still have 2 more years.
Okay.
So yeah, and in fact, a couple folks asked me that during the weekend, and I need to confirm exactly what it is because we have added a couple things with our relationship with the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, specifically related to girls flag football. And
that's right.
So I need to find out if that had any years impact on the boys, we'll call it boys football, state championships. I don't know if it did or not, but I thought we still had 1 or maybe 2 more years on the current contract, but I need to find out.
Okay, yeah, that's true. I forgot about that. Of course, and then the girls would use all those I don't want to call them auxiliary fields, but there's like 8 other fields there. The true lawn complex. That's where they would play those games in, right?
Well, it depends.
Or would they go to the stadium maybe?
Well, it all depends how the tournament is set up. If we set it up that it is, I'll just make this up. If it's like a 16-team state tournament,
okay,
where we play it all in one day, yeah, we can utilize those fields. Or if we set it up like our traditional state tournaments, we could use local high schools too. It's we kind of have our fingers crossed, I guess is the best way to say it, that we might even be able to play the championship game inside Tom Benson.
Okay.
So that would be ideal. But we're still kicking around those things. I think it all really depends how many teams do we advance to the state tournament. Okay.
Tim Stried is our guest from the OHSAA. I've had a lot of folks ask me this past weekend because of the bitter cold that in a couple of years would there be a possibility one way or the other that maybe the state title games may get a little run up in Cleveland maybe at Brook Park when the Browns open up their stadium, and they're scheduled to open up in 29, I think. 28 or 29. I'm sure there would be at least some conversations there about that.
Well, that's a great question, and you just told me more than I know about it in terms of when that might open. It really all comes down to availability and costs, honestly. And I saw someone send a note to us on social that Ohio's the only northern state that plays outside, and that is not true. Wisconsin plays outside at Camp Randall.
Yep.
But certainly when folks come to our office and want to talk to us about any of our state tournaments, we'll listen. But I just I can't imagine, and this is just me talking personally, but I just can't imagine a scenario where we would play games in the dome of the Browns facility that it would be affordable for us or them. The expenses that go into a big stadium like that are just really high. It will be a big stadium, and with big stadiums come a minimum level of law enforcement, concessions, medical, ticket takers, ushers, all that stuff. So the bigger stadium you have, the more expenses there are. And, right now we just have such a good relationship with Canton, and the stadium is just the perfect size. And we've got things down so well that I think it would really take a lot for us to move out of Canton. But as you said, it's still going to be a few years down the road till that's open. So it'll be an interesting few years here as we all see that thing get built.
Yeah, no doubt. Because And again, they would have to like really, I mean, make it a really nice deal. Of course, we're hoping they stay here in Canton forever and ever. But I'm sure some people might want to say, hey, 7 games, we can be under a roof. We don't have to worry about the weather and this and that and the other. But I guess we'll kind of cross that bridge when we get there. I did want to ask you about a game that happened a couple of weeks ago that ended up at Paycor Stadium in Cincinnati. And I think they ended up with 23, maybe 24,000 for Elder and X. And how quickly everybody was able to pivot from Mason to, I guess somebody made a couple of phone calls or whatever, and the Bengals and Paycor said, okay, let's do this. Just walk us through that process, if you could, and how seamless it appeared from up here in the north that, wow, look what they did, and what a great night for football that was for everybody down there in Montgomery County.
It was, and Hamilton County.
Hamilton.
And,
I keep saying Montgomery. Hamilton.
That's okay. But, I'm sure people around the state looked at that and thought, wow, what did the OHSAA do? And it did it, which we didn't do a whole lot. I'll get to that. But it did end up being an amazing night of football for sure. 24,000 there. It looked great. And the kids, Elder as well, said they had an amazing experience. They lost though, but it really was a amazing night of high school football. That game was going to be at Mason High School, and we've had a lot of games at Mason High School, and we've had a lot of games at Mason that sold out. That happens sometimes. We cannot afford to automatically place a game at Nippert Stadium at UC or Paycor or places like that. But when the game sold out so fast on Monday morning, by Monday afternoon, there were folks who can make phone calls and get things done with the Hamilton County Commissioners and talking to the Bengals. The stadium was available Friday night. So those two groups they should get all the credit. The Hamilton County paid a lot of the expenses. The Bengals picked up a lot of the expenses. So by Tuesday morning, when those two groups said, hey, we're going to cover the expenses for X, Y, and Z, then we said, oh, well, now we have a possibility of playing there. So then by Tuesday afternoon, it was a done deal. But if it would not have been for Hamilton County paying a lot of the expenses and the Bengals also paying a lot of the expenses, we would have stayed at Mason. Would have stayed at Mason with a sellout. And, now it all ended up working out very well. But, if and that's happened before, that down in Cincinnati, you have TQL Stadium for the soccer team, Paycor for the Bengals, and Nippert for UC. Those 3 facilities are amazing, but they're very expensive. And, we cannot afford what a normal stadium like that costs to rent for a day. But when you get groups like what happened, like stepped in and said, hey, we'll take care of it. That's how something like that happens.
Yeah, it was fascinating to watch from here, the wheels in motion. And then before you knew it, the other 17 or 18,000 that would not have had the opportunity to go all of a sudden did in a first-class facility. And I thought it looked really cool. I was able to see some video, and it looked like the whole lower bowl looked packed, and it really looked nice. And then I had some people ask me, well, why wouldn't they go to Nippert? And I wasn't thinking about cost. I was thinking, BYU and Cincinnati were going to play there on Saturday night. Fox was coming, the whole big noon and all that stuff, and they probably wouldn't have had enough time to turn that thing around anyway. But I thought that was a great story, and I wanted to ask you about that. As far as this past high school football season with the playoffs, did you notice a few more sites that were willing to host this year? Did that make it a little bit easier, or was it still a little bit of a struggle for you?
Well, it definitely takes effort. I wouldn't even say it was a struggle, but the big change this year, which you guys I'm sure saw, and I'll get your feedback here too. But we didn't go neutral sites till the regional final.
Right.
And I'll tell you, in every previous year, we went neutral site at the regional semifinal, and that is a challenge. that takes a lot of work, and you end up using some sites that aren't the best fit, but they're available. We've talked about that before, and you get people chirping on social, why in the heck would you put that game there? And they don't know all that goes into that.
Yep.
So this year we didn't go neutral site to the regional final, and it was perfect. We had, that's 28 games. We had 28 stadiums that we were able to put games, and I think we're going to stay with that because
Okay, that was going to be my next question. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to stay with that because the amount of less stress. I mean, that's not the greatest answer really, but putting 56 games at neutral sites when teams are still playing often, and so we don't have their stadium, that is a lot of work, and you get some schools that aren't happy with where they're going. But if you put a game at the host school stadium, you're going to get all of their people and all of their infrastructure and concessions and all those workers that work the regular season. Now they stay and they work the playoff game. That's just such a better scenario for the OHSAA and the host school. Now there is some more travel sometimes, those regions, especially in some divisions like Division 2 and Division 6, those are some big regions based on where those size schools are around Ohio. So you do deal with that a little bit, but I think it was a win-win situation.
Tim Stried is our guest from the OHSAA on the Sam Bourquin Show, 1310 WDPN, all of our social media platforms. So was there pretty good feedback this year after the football season was over? You mentioned that the first 3 rounds the teams hosted, so it was a little bit easier maybe to get some neutral site places. You had the first round bye. What any feedback on that from coaches, players, administrators, whatever? How the whole first round bye thing took off this year for you?
Yeah, we did. And I tell you, I pleasantly surprised that it was almost all positive. And, it's amazing when we first announced that we were going to reduce to 12 and the top 4 teams would have a bye. You heard, we heard the coaches that said, no, I don't want to bye. I don't want to bye in week 11. That's not the right time for a bye. We all heard that from some coaches. And it ended up being every coach I talked to about it, including all 14 in the state championship games. I asked them, and they all said, yeah, some of them said loved it right away. Some of them said, at first I didn't like the sound of it and I didn't really know how it would go, but we ended up really liking it. And so I heard a lot of that. If there is a coach that had a bye in the first round and didn't like it, I'm sure there are some,
sure,
but I didn't hear about it. So I think that's here to stay too.
Tim, as we wrap up, to kind of shift into basketball in the winter. From what I understand, everybody's going to go to Dayton now for the Final Four instead of having the semifinals that were kind of all over the state of Ohio a year ago. And of course, we had a magical day up here at Canton at the field house, a day that we'll all never forget. But everybody going to go to Dayton now, and they'll get to experience that whole Final Four for all the divisions.
Yeah, everybody is going to go to Dayton. By everybody, I mean the 28 schools that qualify for the state Final Four. Everything will be in Dayton. Now, we will play some of the state semifinal games at Wright State University.
Okay.
But, this year, for example, in baseball, everyone comes to Akron Canton, and the Rubber Ducks host the majority of the games, but some of the semifinals are at Thurman Munson Stadium in Canton. That's exactly the scenario we'll use for basketball. UD will be the host site. We'll play all the championships there, some of the semifinals, and then Wright State will host some of the semifinals. But that's a collegiate arena too. That's 11,000 seats and certainly a high level arena. The thing we're still debating is, will we need an additional site for some of the semifinals? In fact, during this weekend in Canton, I made a note on my calendar that I need to do a press release on that here pretty soon to announce what the final state tournament schedule's like, to see if we do need a third site or not. But we'll and I don't know if that's been settled yet. So that's kind of why I was thinking
Okay.
I need to find out if we're going to use another site like Wittenberg University, or there's some really big high school gymnasiums down there. Vandalia Butler seats 4,000. Trent Arena, where Kettering Fairmont plays, seats 5. So we'll be fine down there. But yeah, we're still ironing out the final details on that.
Good stuff. Well, Tim, we always appreciate the visit. Congrats on a great football season, and hopefully basketball will follow right along. Appreciate some of the updates from the OHSAA, and have a great holiday season. Have a great winter sports season. We'll catch up, I'm sure, down the road. Thanks again.
Sounds great. Thanks, Sammy. Good to see you.
You bet. There he goes. Tim Stried from the OHSAA joining us here on the Sam Bourquin Show, 1310 WDPN.